Welcome to another big train tour at the Colorado Railroad Museum. This week, we'll be taking a look at Colorado and Southern Railway Post Office and Express Car number 254. Donated to the museum in 1968 by the Colorado and Southern, this heavyweight steel railroad car has served as a popular step-aboard exhibit for many years. It remains proudly displayed in golden and ready to tell the story of the U.S. Railway Mail Service, one of the great game changers of the 19th century for our sprawling and growing country. Hi, I'm Paul Hammond, Executive Director of the Colorado Railroad Museum. Our subject, Railway Post Office, or RPO for short, itself has one of the less complex histories compared to other artifacts in our full-size rail vehicle collection. Built in 1924 by American Car and Foundry, this car combined an RPO section in one end of the car with a Railway Express section in the other. It was delivered to the Colorado and Southern as its number 254. It would retain the same number and basic appearance throughout its entire service life. But railway post offices were not so much known for their individual attributes as for their part in making up a nationwide system. Let's take a look at the history of the railway mail service here in the U.S. and the role that number 254 played in providing that service from Montana south through Wyoming and Colorado to Texas. As we know today, a successful representative democracy depends upon the free exchange of people, goods, and ideas. The railway's invention in the early part of the 19th century would help speed up commerce throughout the United States, but mail still moved at a relatively slow pace. It was sorted in post offices, then loaded into bags, and sent to other post offices, either by horse and wagon, or sometimes by train. And then it was again sorted and moved on to its final destination, perhaps stopping again along the way for more sorting. George Armstrong, manager of the Chicago Post Office in the early 1860s, is generally credited with being the founder of the concept of en route mail sorting aboard trains. Mail had been carried in locked pouches aboard trains previously, but there had been no organized system of sorting en route to have mail prepared for delivery when the mail pouches reached their destination city. Armstrong experimented with this concept, and the first railway post office, or RPO, began operating on the Chicago and Northwestern Railway out of Chicago in 1864. The railway mail service was officially inaugurated just a few years later in 1869. By then, the system had expanded to virtually all major railroads, and the country was divided into 6 operating divisions. A superintendent managed each division, all under the direction of Mr. Armstrong, who had been appointed general superintendent of the new postal railway service. By 1907, over 14,000 clerks were providing service over 203,000 miles of railroad. When the post office began handling parcel post in 1913, terminal railway post office operations were established in major cities to handle the large increase in mail volume. The railway mail service reached its peak in the 1920s, then began a gradual decline with the growth of the automobile and eventually commercial aviation and jet aircraft. RPO service on branch lines and secondary routes was discontinued first. Abandonments accelerated in the late 1950s and early 1960s, and many of the remaining lines were discontinued in 1967. Because these mail routes had helped to subsidize the passenger trains they were attached to, it's no wonder that many passenger trains were also being discontinued at the same time. The very last railway post office operated between New York and Washington, D.C. on June 30th, 1977. Today, the U.S. Mail operates in a hub-and-spoke fashion, with major regional sorting centers doing most of the processing, then sending mail directly to the cities where it is distributed. The railway post office system was very different. Let's imagine that you live in the small town of Trinchera, along the Colorado and Southern, south of Trinidad. You drop off a letter at the post office addressed to a good friend in El Paso, Texas. Your postmaster collects up that day's mail and sets out a bag that will be picked up by an evening train heading south towards Texas. The train won't even stop in Trinchera, but instead, the clerks aboard the train will kick out a bag of mail for the town and immediately lift the catcher arm on the mail hook to snag the day's mail from Trinchera. Once aboard, the clerks will quickly sort all of the first-class mail. This is an important step because one of the things they have to know is how to route your letter. It will need to transfer to another train headed in the correct direction. This train is headed for Amarillo and Fort Worth. Your letter might get handed off one or more times to end up being dropped off in San Antonio. It will likely be there the next day, though, since it's only a short distance. This process aboard the RPO car will be repeated again and again at each station during the clerk's 12 to 14-hour shift. This was before zip codes. These post office employees were regularly tested to ensure that they knew their jobs and the correct sorting location in all of the mail cubbies for all of the cities in the U.S. And these employees carried service revolvers because they were handling the U.S. mail, securities, cash, and all manners of valuables that needed to be kept safe and secure. They also had to carry small change, as on many RPO routes, anyone could walk up to the car in a station and purchase a stamp, or simply deposit a letter into a mail slot built into the side of the car. Our car, number 254, was one of 5 identical cars ordered by the Colorado and Southern, a Burlington route subsidiary, in 1924. The Colorado and Southern's standard gauge territory stretched from Billings, Montana on the north, to Denver and then south to Fort Worth and Dallas, Texas. The railway began as the consolidation of several bankrupt railroads in 1898, including a number of narrow gauge routes hailing back to the famed Georgetown, Breckenridge and Leadville, and the Denver, South Park, and Pacific. In 1908, the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad bought control of the Colorado and Southern, although the line continued to operate separately. The Colorado and Southern was also the parent company of the Fort Worth and Denver Railway, which ran from a connection at Tex Line south and east into Texas. This part of the C&S system was established as a separate company because Texas law required that railroads operating within its borders had to be incorporated within that state. Railway post offices at first came in various sizes and varied depending upon the railroad. But by the late 19th century, the Postal Service had developed standards for these cars. The length, layout, even ventilation and lighting intensities were specified. In terms of size, several standard configurations were available, depending on the rail volumes that were being sorted and carried. Car number 254 is just over 70 feet long in total. The RPO section of the car occupies about 30 feet of this total. The balance of the car was used by the American Railway Express Company, later known as Railway Express Agency, an early package shipment company that used the American Railroad network to move packages nationwide for local distribution to their destination, much like UPS and FedEx do today via aircraft. Car 254 and its siblings operated up and down the lines Billings to Denver and Denver to Amarillo RPO routes continuously until railway mail service on them was finally discontinued in 1967. In addition to newspapers and letters and other more typical mail, the car likely carried parcels filled with baby chicks and live bees, cash payrolls in the tens of thousands of dollars, gold bars, and more over its many years of operation. No wonder those service revolvers were required equipment. Donated to the museum in 1968 by the Colorado and Southern, Car 254 was moved to Golden soon thereafter and has been permanently displayed ever since. It has been restored on one side to its as-delivered appearance, and on the other to its later Burlington route appearance. It remains an icon not only of Colorado railroading, but also of the United States Postal Service and the ever-important mail, which helped bring our spread out nation closer together throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you've enjoyed our tour of Colorado and Southern Railway Post Office and Express car number 254. I also hope that your appreciation for Colorado's rich railroad heritage continues to grow with each and every tour of the museum's collections.
Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Commenting and sharing in particular may qualify as virtual engagements for important funding programs like the SCFD.